Hello, and welcome to Eastwind HealerCast. I'm your host, Carrie Hoosman, and today I'm interviewing Natasha Clark, DNP, who provides mental health services here at Eastwind. The information presented on this podcast is educational in nature and is not medical, psychological, or other licensed healthcare advice, nor is it substitute for seeking licensed healthcare services. Any actions you take based on the information contained in this podcast is strictly at your own risk. Please refer to the podcast disclaimer below underneath the podcast interview for further information. Thank you and welcome, Natasha.
Thank you.
So glad that we could get you on the interview on the podcast today. And I really would like to open up with what drew you to working in mental health?
Yeah, so I started out as a women's health nurse practitioner. I worked in gynecologic oncology. And so with those women that had cancer, obviously there was a lot of mental health things that go into that. I also worked with patients who have chronic pelvic pain, and that's also like a huge mental health area, lots of history of trauma with those patients. And I just felt like I wasn't able to like provide both mental health and physical health care to them. So I decided to go back to school and get a second certification as a psych mental health nurse practitioner. Initially fully anticipated just working in women's health still and providing extra mental health care, but then kind of life led me elsewhere, and now I full-time work in mental health.
Got it. Thank you for that. And you work with both children and adults. How did you discover that you enjoyed working with kids too?
Yeah, so way back when I went to nursing school, I always knew I was either going to work in pediatrics or like labor and delivery. Like those were the two areas that I knew I was like only going to work in. And so when I graduated, I actually was a NICU nurse. And so I worked in the NICU for 5 years before I went back to graduate school. And so I've always just enjoyed working with kids. And so one of my rotations during my psych degree was at Tanager Place working with kids. And it made me kind of rediscover kind of my interest in working with kids. And so actually after I graduated, I did work at Tanager in their outpatient clinic, providing medication management to kids right after graduation.
Wonderful. And you've had some other interesting experiences since your training. I mean, you've worked as a teacher of advanced nursing services at Mount Mercy as well, and you're also providing child psych services at the university too. So you still end up really providing a wonderful array of services and really keeping you at the kind of top of your game, so to speak, as far as continual review of material. So tell me, with all that said, what do you enjoy most about providing services here at Eastwind, which is very different from those larger systems?
Yeah. So at the hospital, I'm actually now, I do a little bit less with children, and I'm actually a hospitalist. So I rotate through like our inpatient services and crisis stabilization. So I get more like acute, significant like mental health things kind of in the inpatient setting. Which is way different than what I provide at Eastwind. And so I kind of like coming here, I'm able to like spend more time with patients and do therapy and really focus on more prevention. Whereas at the hospital, I'm kind of treating more acute, severe things. So it's like a nice balance. I get still to treat people with mental health, but they're two completely different situations.
Absolutely. And it also is nice to just know who to call over there in the crisis stabilization center. So that's great if those services are needed. Now, I'd like to shift and talk a little bit about your experience with EMDR. Can you tell us a little bit about what EMDR is and what a session is like? This is a specific type of therapy.
Yeah, so it's most known, I would say, for like a trauma therapy. So it can be really good for people that have had trauma. But what I always tell people is like trauma is a spectrum. So you can have like small traumas and really big traumas. And so I use it for people all along the spectrum. Obviously, it can be used for someone that has like a significant history of like physical, sexual, emotional abuse. It can also be for people that have had, just, continuous small things in life that have built up to create, bigger things. My approach to it is I spend a lot of sessions kind of searching for what I call like core negative beliefs. So for a lot of people, this is like feeling not good enough, feeling like they can't trust, feeling unsafe, and on and on. There's lots of different ones. And a lot of people have more than one of those core negative beliefs. And so once we kind of have a good grasp of what those beliefs are, then we kind of start doing the actual like EMDR. And there's different ways to do it, but I have a machine. You just kind of hold the paddles in your hand, and they vibrate like left, right. And the idea is that, just to simplify it, it's more complicated than this, but that bilateral stimulation is kind of accessing like emotions, but then also memories. And the idea is that like negative emotions are tied to past memories. And through the process of doing it, we're removing the negative emotion from the memory. And so then in the end, we're left with the memories. We can never get rid of memories, but we can get rid of like the negative emotion that's attached to it. And by doing that, things that happen in our day-to-day life that maybe previously would have triggered us and made us, for example, feel like unsafe or not good enough, that's not really happening anymore because we've removed kind of all those negative emotions from those past memories.
And so as far as results, when you're collapsing the charge on those factual events, so really the facts remain, yes, the bad thing happened, but it doesn't have control over my decision making and how I approach things moving forward. It doesn't have that charge attached. So what kind of results do you see or could come from EMDR sessions for someone's trauma?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is just that I think people feel like more at peace. They're not getting worked up about, small things that maybe previously would have bothered them. That could be something as simple as like, oh, I used to see a certain type of car that reminded me of a past abuser, and now I can see those cars all the time. And seeing those cars doesn't bother me anymore. It can be something like really as simple as that, or just in general, again, just like feeling so much more calm because they don't have like that big stress, that past trauma that they're carrying with them every single
Having
day.
to be so watchful or attentive or hyper alert. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about the other side of this. So some people will come in, and I've certainly had patients who have reported this as well, of having had a bad or negative experience with EMDR in the past, not with you. Yeah. And and again, sometimes that can be a product of skills of the practitioner. But how do you help someone who comes in saying, I want to work with the EMDR, but I had this bad experience in the past? And then also, how do you manage or help someone if challenging content, because you're obviously working with challenging content here, right? When challenging things come up in the session, how are you supporting a patient in general terms in a session with that?
Yeah. So I guess speaking on like them coming in with prior bad experiences, the first thing is usually just to explore like why it was bad, like what happened. And then based on that can try to work backwards. For some people, it could be that maybe they like jumped in too quickly and they weren't ready for it. Maybe they started with like a really big trauma and their body just wasn't ready for that. And so a lot of times it's taking more time to maybe work on smaller traumas, because again, if we can kind of start working on smaller things and get them a little bit more stable, then we can go into the bigger things and like they're just in a better space to be able to handle them. Or creating like a safe space. Sometimes we call it a safe space, or I mean, there's lots of different terms for it, but essentially it's where like if they notice that they're starting to get really triggered, We can do kind of more like meditative or different types of things to kind of go into like, okay, where is that safe space that we decided? For some people, it's like a past vacation or like a lake that they really like going to, and so it's like, okay, we like stop immediately when we notice that they're triggered, and we try to go to kind of that safe space, that happy place that they have that feels more safe. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of like discovering like, okay, what went wrong? How can we go slower? How can we create kind of a safe place to go to? Like if you start to notice it. But the biggest thing I will say is like not jumping right into big traumas, and really working on small things just to get like a solid foundation so that they can handle the big things would be definitely a common thing to do. And then, I mean, I would say similar to like if this is their first time doing EMDR, and they start to, show distress or something during a session, it would be the same thing. Like, obviously, we would have like kind of taken our time, created a safe place. I usually always start with small things, even if they haven't had a past bad experience, just because, again, I think a lot of people do need a level of stability to be able to handle big things. So yeah, usually we'll kind of start with like kind of more small, kind of tolerable things before we move into big things. So I would say the approach is the same. It's just that maybe I go a little bit slower and I'm a little bit more cautious in people that have like had a bad experience in the past.
That makes a lot of sense, and I really like what you're describing as far as how you address that well. So thank you for that. So shifting a little bit, I'd like to talk about mindfulness. You like it, obviously, enough to include it in your business name. And can you tell me what mindfulness means to you, and how do you feel it can be incorporated into daily life?
Yeah. So to me, mindfulness, I mean, at its core is just kind of like being able to be present. I think a lot of mental health things, especially like anxiety and stuff, a lot of times our brain is jumping to the past or it's jumping to the future. And it's like getting stressed about those things that happened before or might happen in the future, instead of focusing on like right now. Because if we can focus on right now, again, unless we're like in the midst of something stressful, but like generally, if we can focus on like, okay, we're here right now, like we're sitting here. There's not a lion chasing us right now. There's nothing right now in front of us that's like putting us at risk or like gonna harm us. And so what are we stressed about, right? Like we're only stressed when we're jumping to like a different somewhere. But at the core where we're at right now, like we're safe, we're okay. There's nothing for us to be stressed about. And it can have a huge impact on just making people feel more calm and present, less anxious. And so I really enjoy it. When I was working on my doctorate degree, my doctorate project, was focused on teaching people that have chronic pelvic pain, how to do meditation. Because there's lots of literature that shows that like meditation can help with people that have chronic pain. And I think through a few different ways, it kind of like, again, helps relax them, kind of can make them feel more calm, which mentally just is helpful. But also for some people that have chronic pain, it can be related to like myofascial, like tension and dysfunction. And so their body's just super tensed. And so if they can like meditate, their body relaxes, which can also physically have a positive impact on their chronic pain, along with the mental benefits of it. So that's where I first really got into meditation. And then I've just kind of, built on that since then.
So if you were able, I mean, obviously I'm assuming that you probably work with meditation with your patients, but if you were able to teach all of your patients one mindfulness technique, would it be meditation, or would there be something else that you would like people to be able to use in the moment? A lot of times they're thinking, oh, I've got to find a quiet place. My kids need me. I have to work. How do I find a time to meditate? It can be challenging. So is there something you like to use with patients to help them in the moment to be able to be mindful?
Yeah, I do enjoy teaching patients how to meditate. But that being said, I think that sometimes you have to like train your body. I always tell patients it's like training your body to like run a marathon. You have to train yourself to meditate because it takes a lot of like focus. Like you said, some people are like, I don't have time, or like my kids are running around. And so I think it's harder sometimes to get people to sit and meditate. But again, that would be my preference, and I will teach it like when it's appropriate. But otherwise, I think just general day to day that I think people can do if they're walking, if they're driving their car, if they're sitting at work. I mean, whatever it is just doing kind of more like grounding, kind of staying in the present moment types of things. And so, for example, if someone's walking, they could say like, okay, when I go on my walk, I'm going to focus on looking for flowers. And so then as they're walking, they're like, okay, like there's a certain kind of flower, there's a certain kind of flower. So you could do like flowers, trees, animals, colors. But again, it's getting your mind to like tune into your environment and focus on like what you can see in your environment, which again, gets you out of like, okay, as I'm walking, I'm thinking about like, okay, later I have to make dinner and I have to like go to the store and I have to like do this assignment maybe for school, or, you know, and so it's like that walk can turn into like still a stressful walk. And so that's a way just for them to like really get present and like make that walk kind of a positive experience and kind of calm them down and make them more present.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think many people, you know, as they're walking, for some people, they may start solving problems, right? You know, as you're walking or running,
Yeah.
you can kind of get into some theta waves, and sometimes solutions will come to the surface, right? Even if you're not thinking about them. So enjoying that more open space instead of being so, I've got 8 things I've got to do yet tonight, right? Before I go to bed, whenever that is.
Yeah.
So now you also, so not only providing therapy using EMDR frequently, you prescribe medications for both children and adults. Now, I know this may seem like a strange question, and I know what my personal favorite is, but what is your absolute favorite age and diagnosis to treat and why?
Yeah, like for therapy, I love working with like college age and above. Like that's kind of my specialty for therapy. But yeah, for medication management, I actually really enjoy working with kids that especially have like oppositional defiant disorder or ADHD, different kinds of behavioral things. Because I think once you can treat it and get a hold on it, it can be really life changing. I mean, not only for the kid, but for like the teachers, for the parents, for their like interpersonal relationships with their friends. I think it just sets the stage for their life. So I really like to be able to like have that impact on little kids.
That's terrific. And I would agree. It can really change a trajectory when that is no longer encumbering their ability to connect with people and have relationships and maintain them. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much today for joining us, Natasha. I know you're very busy, and I'm so glad that you are providing services here, and you have some really good hours for a lot of people too. So that really helps working around your other schedules. So thank you so much. And if you'd like to learn more about Natasha's practice or schedule with her, please reach out to us at eastwindhealingcenter.com. You can check out her bio there, which has her contact information.